Shalom and welcome to our show, The Crossover, a show aimed at bridging gaps between Jews and Christians. Today we have a very special guest on our show, David Rubin. He is a New York Jew who chose to make Aliyah and move to Israel's biblical heartland in Judea and Samaria, and what the world calls the West Bank, and where most of the terror attacks are occurring. He is also a former mayor of the rebuilt community in Shiloh, the place where the tabernacle rested for 369 years and in Israel's first capital. David and his 3-year-old son were also terrorist victims, and because of this, David founded the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund. This organization helps terror victims by supporting projects for children in the communities that have been most affected by terror. We hope that you'll be inspired as you hear David Rubin's spiritual journey from being only circumcised in the flesh to being circumcised in his heart, as he follows the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Here's Mitch and David. Enjoy.
For nearly 2,000 years, Jews and Christians have been divided. But now, God is calling for the healing of past hurts and the comforting of his people. Discover how God is prophetically uniting Jews and Christians across the world today on The Crossover. And now, here is your host, Mitch Jerome.
David, welcome to our show, The Crossover. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
David, start us off. When you were in New York going for your doctorate degree in education at Columbia, and you were pursuing your career in the world, and all of a sudden you yielded at the sign and did an about-face and ended up moving to Israel and doing Aliyah. What happened in your life to change your whole pattern?
Well, it wasn't quite as abrupt as that.
Okay.
It was a process, which started several months after the Lebanon War. And I was very moved by the Lebanon War, and just what was going on in Israel affected me deeply. I found myself glued to the New York Times.
And what year was that?
1982.
Okay.
And at that time I was 25 years old. And I just started exploring anything I could get my hands on, anything about Israel, anything about Jewish history, the Holocaust, whatever it may be. I was looking into it and I was reading it and I was piling up books and learning whatever I could. And over a period of time, about a year, 2 years, I explored this and I eventually came to realize that one cannot explore Israel and Zionism and Jewish history without coming to God, without coming to Jewish religion.
And you were a Jew at the time. Were you, what kind of were you going to temple?
I
were you
always was
religious?
a Jew. I was bar mitzvahed and I, my parents actually had a kosher home, but I was basically raised with Jewish ritual, with some Jewish ritual, but not real Jewish meaning and understanding of what it means in a deeper sense. And I was educated in New York City public schools. So for me, when I suddenly began to realize, hey, this is the people that brought the world the Bible, and this is a people that descended from King David and King Solomon, and there's tremendous wisdom and tremendous philosophy in this people that I'm a part of. For me, it was like a whole world opened up that I had never experienced before.
So you were studying history, you were reading the scriptures?
Yes.
They both had an impact?
Absolutely.
What about the scriptures? Is there, was that a book, you were a Jewish person that maybe didn't have a relationship with God at one time? Was that fair to say? Raised Jewish, did the ceremonies of Judaism, but didn't
Some of
have
the ceremonies.
the relationship? Okay.
Yes, that's true.
And what brought that relationship to a peak?
Well, it really came from, I mean, if I could sum it up in 1 minute, I would say that there's a passage which says that you shall be to me a kingdom of priests, a kingdom of ministers, more accurately translated, and a holy nation. And what that means is that, as it says in the prophet Isaiah, the Jews are supposed to be a light unto the nations. That we have a responsibility to be the spiritual leaders of the world. And all of that is connected with what I began to explore, which is Zionism in Israel. And there is an integral relationship, a deep relationship between Jewish spirituality and the land of Israel.
So, you had an awakening, obviously. You saw the purpose of the chosen people as stated in the scriptures. You were quoting Isaiah.
Yes.
Okay. So that book then, to you as an Orthodox Jew, is this the inerrant Word of God? Or is this just a book with a lot of wisdom in it that's full of stories and allegories?
Well, the wisdom and the stories and the allegories are quite insightful. But it's not just a book of mythology and legend. We believe that it is the Word of God, and that the lessons to be drawn from it, and we speak about it at our Sabbath table, our Shabbat table every single week, and I sit with my family and my children, we speak about the lessons for life that can be gained from the Bible.
And the reason I ask the question that way, David, is because I know there are different, like in Christianity, different denominations all under Christianity, and Judaism too. You've got Reformed, Conservative, Orthodox, and I believe that the Reformed and Conservative maybe take that more as allegorical and story than it is as the inerrant Word. And there's a big difference between those two.
When I was exploring, there was a very pivotal moment, and that is when I came to the understanding that the Jewish people received the Torah, which is Bible in Hebrew, from God on Mount Sinai. When I reached that understanding, then it was clear sailing from there. From that point on, I began to understand that there are certain implications as a result of that.
And responsibilities.
And responsibilities. To be a light unto the nations is not a privilege. To be a chosen people is not a... it is a privilege. I see it as a privilege. But more than that, it's a responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's a responsibility which is incumbent on every Jew. And it's a big responsibility.
Well, you took that responsibility from our eyes to the hilt. One, to create relationship with the Lord is wonderful. It's got to be fulfilling. It's got to be a completing feeling in Judaism, in any religion. But then you moved to Israel from Brooklyn and gave up your career to do what's called Aliyah. That's a commitment of a whole nother level. What happened in that process? To move to the land, to leave New York.
As I said, to live in the land of Israel is considered to be equal to all of the commandments. That's what our sages teach us. It is a mitzvah, a commandment, equal to all of the mitzvot, equal to all of the commandments.
Do you see then?
It is on such a level, and it's also because it's not an easy thing to do. You know, as the first Jew Abraham did, you know, when God told him, go from your father's home, from your homeland, from the place where you were born, to the land that I will show you. And he was referring to the land of Israel. And it's not easy to just pick yourself up, to leave your family, to go to a place and learn where you've never been on the other side of the world and learn a new language. It's not an easy transition to make, but it is very rewarding. It's a place that is, the land of Israel is a place that is rich with meaning. Our lives are full of meaning every day. There is nothing that does not have meaning for us in the land.
You even made a move to the settlements, to biblically what's called Judea and Samaria, that area, which we can open up that Bible and read plenty about that area 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. That's making the news here in America, as you well know, every night, as far as just far from being a peaceful place. A lot of terrorist activities take place. I mean, you could have moved to Tel Aviv, and I think that's on the beach, but you moved to the settlements right in the midst of it all. Why?
Well, you have to understand, Mitch. Tel Aviv is not the land that's spoken about in the Bible. It's a part of the land of Israel, but it's a city that was created about 100 years ago. Abraham did not walk in Tel Aviv. But Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did walk in Shiloh, in Samaria, in the biblical heartland. And Shiloh, where I live, is the first capital of Israel. We're talking about the first capital of ancient Israel, where the tabernacle stood for 369 years, where Joshua divided the land amongst the 12 tribes of Israel. This is the place where the woman Hannah prayed for a son, and that son who was born was Samuel the prophet. We're talking about an almost magical place, which has great significance in Jewish history.
And how did you come to Shiloh from New York? I mean, what research did you do that brought you? Did you go right there, or did you?
Well,
first live in
to
other areas?
tell you the truth, I saw a pamphlet that someone had put out, and it said on it, "Before there was Jerusalem, there was Shiloh." And I said, "Wow, that's very interesting. Everyone knows about Jerusalem, but not everyone knows about Shiloh." So I looked it up. I looked it up in my Bible, and I saw that Shiloh was indeed the first capital of Israel. It's mentioned repeatedly in the book of Joshua, in the book of Samuel. And I found out that it's a community that was reborn 27 years ago, after Israel miraculously recaptured the heartland of Judea and Samaria in 1967 in the Six-Day War, when Israel miraculously defeated all of the Arab armies in 6 days, and on the 7th day we rested. And I was so moved by all that I said, wow, and Shiloh is being built up again. And I heard that there are 150 to 200 families already living in Shiloh, and I became one of them, and they're now 300 plus, and
did you ever
growing every day.
Ever think, David, that you would become the mayor? David, you were the mayor of Shiloh for how long?
Yes. Well, I had the privilege of being the mayor for 1 year. The mayor of Shiloh, it's like any small town mayor. It's an elected but non-paying position.
Okay.
So I consider it to be a privilege, but
Sure.
but it's in some ways not an easy job, because you have to continue doing your regular job at the same time.
Share with us a little bit more modern here regarding the settlements. You moved there with a passion for the roots, the Hebraic roots that ignited in you. Today on the news we hear Sharon and the government are to bring peace, is to move you, the settlers, off the land. I don't know if Shiloh is one of those settlements, but various settlements in Judea and Samaria, if I'm correct, to move them for hundreds of thousands of dollars a family, to move them off the land. We know it has nothing to do with the money. People do not want to move. But if you could explain to our viewers, I want to call you a biblical Zionist. I mean, that the Word of God, the Bible was birthed in you, the Torah, and you see the importance of that land, biblically speaking. And then you have, if I can call Sharon a secular Zionist, a political man whose heart is there for the people of Israel, for the land, but he's willing to compromise on that land where the settlers are not ready to compromise at all, if that's accurate. What's the conflict here, if you can bring us up to our viewers up to date?
Well, as you alluded to, the conflict stems from two different views of Zionism. There is the secular view that is rooted in the belief of the first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, who said that we are determined to be a nation like all the other nations. So there is that view, which says that we should be a nation like all the other nations, with all of the privileges of other nations, but of course all of the negative aspects of other nations, such as having crime in the streets of Tel Aviv, which we have today. On the other hand, we have the view of trying to be a kingdom of ministers and a holy nation. That our plan is to be a light unto the nations, that we are to create this model society in the land of Israel that the world can look up to and say, wow, that's how we need to be.
Now you're speaking for the biblical Zionists that can see that?
That's right. The core of the religious residents of Judea and Samaria come from that. Although there are many non-religious Jews living in Judea and Samaria, especially in the two bigger cities of Judea and Samaria, but the core of the settlement movement was and remains religious. And that's where our faith comes from, and our belief comes from the Bible, which says that the land of Israel stretches all the way from the Mediterranean Sea to the Euphrates River, which interestingly enough flows through Iraq. Okay, but here we're fighting over a small area of the western land of Israel, which is between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River.
Right.
And it's
tragic.
We're talking about an area smaller than the size of the state of New Jersey.
Okay, but even just the Judea-Samaria area.
Well,
I mean, that's
Judea and Samaria.
a slice of the slice.
Yes, but it's not just a slice. Judea and Samaria is in the center of the land of Israel. We're talking about a half an hour from Jerusalem, about 35 to 40 minutes from Tel Aviv, and about an hour and a half up to what we call the Kinneret, otherwise known as the Sea of Galilee. So we're talking about a very central location where Samaria is 9 miles from the major population centers in the coastal areas.
Where is
Now,
this?
can you imagine
Go ahead.
establishing a hostile state 9 miles
That was my question. Okay.
from where you live?
No.
That's something it's very hard for an American to understand. Okay, but we're talking about very, very real dangers. And anyone who would withdraw, and I'll venture to say anybody who would have the chutzpah to withdraw, would have the nerve to withdraw from an area that is 9 miles from the major population centers, is totally irresponsible. And here I'm not even talking about, my trusty Bible, which is sitting right here. I'm talking about basic security, basic life and death.
Right.
It's irresponsible, and I don't care how many medals as a great general Prime Minister Sharon received. He's being irresponsible to even talk about such things and even hint towards such things.
So I don't know if you can answer this, but what's the attitude of the people of Israel regarding creating this state on their own land? What percent of the people are for Sharon? Go ahead and do it. Let's get it done. We'll have peace.
Well, we have very conflicting polls. On one hand, we have a consistent anywhere from 45 to 55% of the population that is willing to give up land in exchange for peace, which means a piece of paper. The polls usually don't say that it means a piece of paper that says we will make peace, as opposed to really having peace. And it's often misinterpreted by the media, because the media says, hey, 55%, 60% of the population are in favor of withdrawal in exchange for peace. But they're not being told that what is going to happen is that they're being given a piece of paper from the Arabs saying that they're in favor of peace. They're in favor of making peace.
Well, they've had
That's
this
all they're
paper
being
before,
given.
but
We've
it's just
had
a
the
piece of
paper with the
paper.
Oslo Accords. We've
Right.
had the paper several times, and we haven't seen peace.
Yeah, exactly. We know that.
We've seen only more war and more terror,
a false hope there. Yeah.
and it's absolutely irresponsible to do what the Prime Minister is planning to do now, which is to disengage, as he calls it, which means basically to withdraw from Gaza, which is along the southern coast, and to simply give it away, not even in exchange for a piece of paper. And that's the problem here, as I see it.
So what about Aliyah? Do you see a greater influx still to this day, even though with all the intifada going on and all this violence into the land from South America, from Africa, from Russia? Is it still pronounced? That's what we're being told over here.
The main sources of Aliyah these days are from the countries that have been afflicted with anti-Semitism, and such as the former Soviet Union. It has slowed down from the former Soviet Union, and much of the focus is on France,
Yes.
where there's been a vast increase in anti-Semitism.
And a big increase in Islam.
Yes. From the United States, most Aliyah to Israel, most people moving to Israel, it mainly comes from those who have some understanding of their Jewish heritage.
Yeah. That did the homework like you, and something gets ignited.
That's usually
Right.
That's usually where it comes from, because it has to come from a positive motivation. I mean, the fact is that people make more money in America, and there is more materialism in America.
People saying we're living in Babylon and enjoying it here, and why would we ever move to
sure.
Israel? We understand what that
Sure,
means.
I'm making half the salary I was making in New York, but that's not what drives me. We don't have a standard of living in Israel like you do in America, but we do have a quality of life.
So the scriptures say then, David, technically all the Jewish people will return to the land, if I understand that correctly.
Yes,
It's not just some, it's all
No,
will come.
it says in the
Yeah.
book of Ezekiel, chapter 36, that there will be an ingathering of the exiles, and we have seen that. We've seen flows of it, and we've seen slowdowns.
It would be nice to have it come for the way you got there was through study and the heart being touched versus increases in anti-Semitism around the world to force people to
Well,
have to go to
those
the
tend
land.
to be the most dedicated soldiers in Israel, I might add, and many of the officers in Israel are now coming from the ranks of the religious Zionists.
David, in the last minute or two that we have here, I just want to give you a chance to speak to our viewers, and we have a diverse audience out here in different cities that our show plays in. And we know we've got some Jewish people that are probably watching tonight that are agnostic. We have some other, I call them secular Jews, maybe like you, more cultural Jews at one time that all of a sudden got ignited to the Torah, to the Word. We have some other Jewish people that perhaps have just totally lost faith, and you tell them that they're the chosen people. To them, it just means persecution and a whole hundreds of years of just attacks and anti-Semitism and et cetera. And we may even have another extreme, somebody who maybe is like David out there that has really been thinking of moving to the land. It's really been burning in their heart. Maybe you can just share from your experiences to those different groups out there, something that you'd like to impart.
Well, to those people, I would just say that we Jews are not a normal people. We're a part of an amazing nation, even a miracle nation that has survived pogroms and holocausts and persecution and expulsions, and this is not an average people. No people are exiled from their land and after 2,000 years return to their land and build up a new nation. And no nation wins a war in 6 days and then on the 7th day it rests. We are talking about a great people, and I would encourage every Jew to come live in the land of Israel, because Israel is our birthplace, Israel is our destiny, and I would encourage every Jew to strengthen his connection with the land of Israel in whatever way that he can.
Well, thank you, David. We're glad you came to visit us and be on our show, and hopefully we'll do it again.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed watching our show today, and if you would like more information about the program, please contact us. You can also learn more about David and his organization by contacting them on their website, www.shilohisraelchildren.org. Thanks for tuning in. Shalom.
Join Mitch and Rosalie as they reach an ever-growing worldwide audience through the Crossover. We invite you to become a Crossover partner right now by calling the number on your screen. For your monthly gift of $30 or more, you will receive the Crossover Partnership Pack, which includes a DVD of today's program, a personal greeting and prayer message from Mitch and Rosalie, more information about the Crossover Project. As you continue to support the Crossover each month, you will receive a new Crossover DVD, a monthly ministry report, and your name will be added to the Healing Room. Call now or log on to our website and join the growing family of Crossover partners. And be sure to join us again next week as Mitch and Rosalie tackle timely topics and welcome dynamic guests on The Crossover.
Lord God of Abraham, Isaac and Israel, let it be known today that you are God. We offer up our lives as a living sacrifice. Purify us with your holy fire. Holy fire. You are the Holy One, highly exalted One. We've come to worship at your holy hill. You are the Holy One, highly exalted One, and we surrender to your sovereign will, oh Lord God of Abraham. Lord God of Abraham, Isaac and Israel, let it be known today that you are God. There is no other one like you. Come now and fill this place. Be exalted in our praise. Let it be known today that you are God. You are God.